Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Thank you very much for joining with another session on the Rumination News Network. Thank you so much and for participating in this afternoon's discussion. Now, remember that we have a live this afternoon at 4 p.m. That's 4 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. So make sure you check your calendars and know what time you are in. Depending on the time zone that you're in, it might be slightly different. That's 4 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm not sure what time that will be in Trinidad and Tobago. And a shout out to all my Trinidadians who are out there who are joining in the program. You are number one in the analytics in YouTube. So we depend on you for this program. So I'm not sure what time it is or will be in Trinidad at 4 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. But Mr. Pereira and from Guyana, and also Mr. Corbin, that's Mr. Fred Corbin of Barbados, will be joining us this afternoon again to discuss some another important and scintillating topic that we need to be aware of. Now, whatever effect one Caribbean country affects every one of us. Okay, so make sure that you understand that. So if I talk about Jamaica, it's going to have ripple effect or ripple impact, depending sometimes on some more than the other. But remember now that we are CARICOM member states. And even though sometimes we like to, have relative combats or verbal combats here and there, we cannot live without each other. So we need to protect each other's back. We are like a family, and families do have their, verbal spats too, and sometimes physical fights and all of that stuff. But they understand that they cannot live without each other. They can't survive without each other. And we in the CARICOM states cannot survive with each other. And for this one of the reasons I have started these geopolitical channels. I have Rumination News Network, I have Caribbean and Latin American News Now, and I also have Caribbean News Flash. So please join me on all three and follow me on all three platforms so that you can be informed of any breaking stories and commentaries. Thank you so much once more. Now, the title of this afternoon's program is going to be Breaking News, U.S. Venezuelan Deportation Policy Could Spark Chaos in the Region. And I would say particularly Trinidad and Tobago and the Dominican Republic also could see a spill-off. Because, in 2015, there were lots of Venezuelans in the DR because of what was happening due to the economic sanctions that the United States placed on Venezuela. The U.S. has ended protections for Venezuelans, paving the way for mass deportation. Could this trigger chaos in Venezuela and still spill over into Trinidad and the wider Caribbean? In this report, we explore whether Washington's new deportation stance is simply immigration enforcement or part of a bigger geopolitical play to destabilize Nicolás Maduro's government. Okay, so we're going to explore Trump's reversal of protections for Venezuelans, the impact on refugees and border states, how deportations could destabilize Venezuela, possible spillover efforts in Trinidad and the wider Caribbean. Share your views, and do you think this is a deliberate U.S. strategy or unintended fallout? What do you think? Do you think that the fact that Trump is deporting so many Venezuelans, ending the TPS, that's a temporary protection status, do you think he's doing that deliberately, or do you think it's just a fallout, or he's just following the law as he suggests that he is doing? Okay, so mass deportations loom. U.S. policy could spark chaos in Venezuela and Trinidad. Very important that you understand that. Now, we can see, therefore, that because of what was happening in Venezuela, the United States, under the Democratic Party that was under Joe Biden's party, decided that they would allow Venezuela or Venezuelans to come there under temporary protected status. However, since the new administration came in, remember that one of his campaign plans was to limit and to minimize on immigration, as Americans were saying that, these foreigners, so-called foreigners, are coming to their countries and taking away their jobs. And Trump also ran on the fact that immigrants, foreigners, those who are moving from one country, from their home country to the United States, are also importing crime and violence. He's suggesting there's no evidence that immigrants are, just like Trinidadans are complaining that Venezuelans are the major contributors to crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago. The same thing that Americans are saying, that foreigners, immigrants particularly, but I think they specified Venezuelans because they are saying that the gang Tren de Aragua are linked to crime, and they're doing lots of things and creating disorder and mayhem in the United States of America. But some people are suggesting that the Tren de Aragua is not something that exists, a gang that exists. It's not a real gang. It's a ploy of the CIA. Now, I can't say that that is true or that is a lie. I have not really delved into that topic, too deeply, right? So I'm not going to suggest that it's nay or yay, okay? Can't do that. Now, when we look at this, is this just immigration policy or a deliberate geopolitical strategy? Now, I would say that it is both, because I think that Trump wants to minimize the number of foreigners entering the country. Whether we like it or not, the Democrats did go overboard, and they allowed illegally this large flock of immigrants to enter the United States through the borders, the American-Mexican border and other borders in the States. So that is a problem and something that needs to be addressed. The way in which Trump is doing it, the method he's using might be over the top too. But what is happening is that if the Democrats had not done that, maybe it would not have pushed the Republicans to be doing that, to be carrying such a heavy hand or a heavy-handed approach to immigration and to immigrants, right? Now, I think it's also deliberate geopolitical strategy as it works for Trump. If you can have large, portion or a segment of Venezuelan population being deported from the United States, it's going to increase their anger, some of whom might also be armed. We don't know. And they may return to Venezuela, and they may create a lot of mayhem and confusion in that country. And they may have also dangerous gangs, as Trump is saying, which could help to destabilize the Maduro's government. But let us also look at the fact that many of them leaving the United States could wind up in Trinidad and Tobago, because some of them are not going to want to go back. They're not going to want to return to Venezuela. One, they might be persona non grata, even though it's their country. But remember now that some might have betrayed, and Maduro might have what you call it now, intelligence on some of them. They might be dissidents rather to the political regime in Venezuela. So he might decide that he wants to, imprison them, and that could be a problem. So because of that, to avoid that sort of occurrence, many of them may end up, and we don't even know if the US will even send some of them to Trinidad deliberately or to the DR or wherever. We just don't know what these people can, what they will do, okay, to destabilize and then say that, yeah, we have to invade because they are creating chaos in Trinidad or they're creating chaos in the DR or wherever they might be sent. So this could be a geopolitical strategy. We have to look at it. We can't say that it is because we do not have evidence. We can't see behind the scenes what they're doing. But because we have seen many times the playbook of Washington, a lot of times we can make an intelligent guess as to what the US is doing, as to what Washington is doing. And that is why it's important to always study geopolitics. And I've been vouching for some time that geopolitics be a subject from, I would say, from primary school to secondary to university level. We need to be engaged in topics of geopolitics and to connect the dots, know about the countries in the world, US foreign policy, etc., etc. We need to understand that, okay? Because there's a lot of ignorance in the Caribbean region as regards geopolitics. In fact, somebody was telling me the other day, stop talking about Maurice Bishop and go and talk about what is happening in Jamaica. I talk about what's happening in Jamaica all the time. And if you check my channels, I have probably hundreds of videos on Jamaica, critiquing what is happening there. But also I have videos on America, I've critiqued Canada, I have done quite a number of other countries. Okay, so I am not visceral, I'm not a visceral thinker. I think globally. All right. I'm not a globalist, but I think globally because I want to connect the dots to see what is happening in our respective countries. Remember that we're islands in the sea and we don't have the economic nor the political clout. So we are just outposts of the US empire, and we have to look carefully at what they're doing on the US mainland and connect the dots with what is happening at home. Very important that we do that. And that is what I'm trying to do. I hope I'm achieving. I would like to do more, but I can't do more than I'm currently doing at the moment. Now, so Trump is arguing for deportation for large numbers of Venezuelans that could destabilize Venezuela's economy further, right? Because they're going back, they're going to need jobs, right? As I'm suggesting to you, some of them might be sent as, staged provocateurs to disrupt the economy and the social operations of Venezuela. Okay, so we have to look at that very carefully. Now, the increased social tension, as we're seeing, could weaken Maduro's control. And they might go back and they might launch a lot of protest actions. Okay, and we don't know if US can sometimes, provide arms to them to launch attack on the government of Venezuela, or they probably could create a lot of, incidents of crime and violence, which perhaps will say to the United States, it will also push them to invade Venezuela. Okay. Recently we're hearing, and I will talk about that another time, that the United States has just or is about to extradite the opposition leader of Guyana, Mohammed, now under some very interesting and dubious circumstances. But I will save that for another discussion. Okay, now when we look at what could happen to Trinidad and Tobago, just 7 miles from Venezuela, from I think the point of Sucre, it could face a lot of refugee inflows. I know that the Kamala Persad-Becerra's regime, she has been trying to control that inflow of Venezuelans. But if you live or if you have ever lived in Santo Domingo or in the Dominican Republic, you're going to see that as much as they send out, they come back in. They send out a lot of Haitians today, a lot come in tomorrow because it's a business, right? And the United States can make this whole sort of thing a business and bribe the politicians and the commercial economic elites. So they're not working on your behalf as sometimes we think they are. And then they now talk about this nationalism and we need to have national pride and they're protecting their borders. They say all the niceties that we want to hear. But behind the scenes, they're working with the United States to destabilize the entire country. So we have to be alert and we have to look at carefully, examine carefully what is happening. Okay? Now, we understand now that there are tensions between Trinidad and Venezuela in terms of migration. Now, both countries, well, there were no tensions before. I'm sure there would, there had their conflicts now and again, because people do. Once you live even within families, I've suggested on many occasions, people do have conflicts. Because once you have human beings, you are going to have conflicts. I have conflicts with my students, right? Because it's just what it does. Sometimes people say things and you're upset, or they do something and you're going to express your, even sometimes some of you comment on my videos that we have or little verbal combats, right? So people will have verbal and physical combats from time to time. As to whether or not I hate anybody, no, I would not hate them. I don't hate anybody even the haters who send me very nasty comments, I don't hate them. I just respond, and using my own way of hitting back at them. But the fact of the matter is that we know that Venezuela and Trinidad over the years have had very close relationship, brotherly, sisterly relationship, because they're connected. And I understand that you have a community of Venezuelans in Trinidad, and likewise you have a community of Trinidadians living in Venezuela, I think in Sucre. Am I correct? And perhaps other, provinces in Venezuela. Venezuela is a very big country. It's a huge country. So I'm not sure all the provinces, the locations that they have there. if it is bureaus, I'm not sure, boroughs, whatever. I'm not sure what they have there in Venezuela. But I do know that the tension has increased now under the Kamala Persson-Bissessor's regime, as she is suggesting that she's determined that she's going to work harmoniously, collaboratively with Trump to ensure that the criminal elements, the transnational criminal elements, are eradicated from Trinidad and possibly the region. Okay, that is what she's suggesting. And she's working along with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and Trump's national security advisor, along with President Trump himself. Now, could this crisis push Trinidad deeper into U.S. security orbit? Yes, it could if Venezuelans go back to Venezuela, head over to Trinidad, create disturbances to destabilize the country, and the gang and the criminal elements increase. Right now, we're hearing from the police commissioner, I think is Guevara, that's the Trinidad police commissioner of police, that, the drug trafficking has reduced. It seems that crime and violence is seeing a downturn in the United States, not in the United States, but in Trinidad also. So it seems like if the Venezuelans who go back, who leave the United States, go back now to Venezuela, because they might drop them off in Venezuela. But it's possible too, because Washington has a lot of control, that they could drop some of them off in Trinidad and force the immigration people there, the people at customs, to accept them. Right? And then they enter the country and they create a lot of social and political mayhem. We have to watch out for that. So Trinidadans have to be very, very careful of what is happening. Read the news, keep up to date with what is happening with this end of the TPS protection of the Venezuelans in the United States who face deportation. And you wonder if the United States is going to deport many of these Venezuelans, or they're just going to deport the worst of them, right? The ones who are the criminal elements. Because, in all countries, we have our hoodlums. So you really wonder if they're going to deport those hoodlums and use them as provocateurs, right? As provocateurs to use as a pretext to invade Venezuela if they cause any destabilization in Trinidad or in the Dominican Republic. So we need to be asking, is this about immigration or influence? And who really benefits from chaos at Venezuela's doorstep? Who really benefits from that? I think no country, including Venezuela, will benefit from it. But I think that the United States is going to say it's going to be order out of chaos. So they create the chaos to create their type of order, because their type of order is never order. It is always more chaos, right? It fuels more chaos when the United States invades a country. Never builds, never rebuild the country. It always leaves behind chaos and mayhem and confusion, as we would say. So this is what I want to say to you, and Trinidadans have to be on the lookout. They have to be very alert as to what is happening with this TPS and how it could result in more, it could add more fuel to the fire that we're currently seeing, which can speed up, expedite U.S. invasion of Venezuela. So we have to look out. Remember now to join the live this afternoon at 4 p.m. That's Atlantic Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Share the live. I'm sure you should see it on your YouTube. Give it a like. The promotion, give it a like and make your comments so that it can be shared. The algorithm will share the live with as many people on the platform. And I'd like to see 1,000 people on the live today. Let's come and talk and let our voices be heard, because we need now to show that we are one Caribbean and we understand we are empowered through knowledge, because knowledge is power. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Like the video so the videos can be shared with as many people on the platform. And for those of you who'd like to leave a monetary donation, you can leave it at my Cash App. That is the $MZTUCK9. That's the $, MZTUCK9. That's my Cash App. Thank you so much for joining. See you in another video. Ciao.